Sure. Well, good morning and a warm welcome to day two of SIGA's inaugural Sport Integrity Week presented by MasterCard. My name is Ben Jacobs. I am your MC for the week. We're up bright and early, at least on London time, to talk integrity in sport. And we've got a tremendous lineup of panels today. We'll be addressing the impact of COVID-19 on sports integrity in just a moment. We'll also, later in the day, be hearing from the former Manchester United forward Louis Saha on athlete protection, and we'll look at the worrying global growth of piracy, focusing in particular on Be Out Q, a Saudi-based pirate station that stole the rights of beIN Sports, the official broadcaster in the Middle East. We'll have Sophie Jordan, the legal counsel of beIN Sports, alongside other guests. We do encourage you to ask plenty of questions throughout the day. We want this to be really interactive. So in the app, you'll be able to list your questions. Do also say your name and where you're from, the company that you represent as well. And you can engage with us on social media as well throughout the course of the day. All you have to do is use the hashtag SIW. Now, over the week, we'll also be looking to fundraise as well for various SIGA causes. And we do things a little bit differently in the context of this. So a Q code will be flashing up periodically to my right for those of you that want the Eventbrite link using this app. You have to be a little bit quick and tech savvy. It will flash up there. You grab your phone. And obviously, like any other kind of code of that ilk, you simply have to sync it up and it will take you to the link. But if you're much slower like me, or it's just too early to be doing that at the moment, then in our social bios, you'll also see the fundraising links as well via Twitter and Instagram, and you can use them to donate. Now, the way that it's different is there's also a poll, and you can use that poll to vote on how we should allocate the money. So there's lots of different options, such as safeguarding, SIGA Youth Council, money towards future conferences, digitally and in person, such as this as well. So make sure that you use the poll, you vote how the money is distributed, and if you have the financial means during these difficult times, please do donate to SIGA as well to help us do what we do best. So let's move on to our first panel then. As I've already alluded to, it relates to COVID-19 and it's an interregional debate. It will look at the impact of the pandemic on sports integrity and see whether the fact that federations and organizations have less money, and obviously people working as well, will have any kind of direct impact on sports integrity. Is corruption, for example, going to slip through the net? This panel is moderated by Fred Lord, the Director of Anti-Corruption and Transparency at the International Centre for Sports Security. Fred, a very morning to you, and I'll hand over now for a fascinating panel and look forward to you not only moderating but introducing your fellow guests as well.
Thank you very much, Ben. It's an absolute pleasure to be here for SIGA Sport Integrity Week, day two. And it's a very topical panel that we have today for the impact of COVID-19 on sport integrity, a very important issue. We have a very stellar lineup of expert speakers today, which what I'll do now is introduce each panel speaker. They will then have 3 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes to make a statement in relation to some of the important points on COVID-19 and the effect on integrity. We'll then go to some Q&A, and if we have some time, we'll wrap up and ask some questions from the floor. So I'll push forward and introduce our speakers. Our first panel member for today is Mr. Hani Balani, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the CEO of the highest tier professional football league in Qatar, the Qatar Stars League. And he's held that position since 2014. Hani is also the Deputy Chairman of the Asian Football Confederation and FIFA's Referee Committee. I'd like to congratulate Hani for return and safe finalisation and the commencement of the Qatar Stars League football round. So welcome, Hani. Our second speaker is Mr. Leif Billitson. Leif is currently acts as a Senior Program Officer and Deputy Director for the United Nations Integral Crime and Justice Research Institute, UNICRI. He has over 20 years of international experience with the United Nations in managing leading criminal justice and crime prevention and counter-terrorism programs, including programs to strengthen the judiciary, security, law enforcement cooperation, and the countering of radicalisation and violent extremism, and has also been involved in promoting the socialisation and reintegration of violent offenders and returned foreign fighters. Welcome, Leif. Third, I have Mr. Massimiliano Montanari. Massimiliano is the Group CEO of the ICSS and the Executive Director of Save the Dream. Before joining the ICSS in 2012, Massimiliano spent 12 years working for different United Nations organisations, including UNHCR, UNODC, and UNICRI, as well as taking part in a number of UN task forces addressing violent extremism and war crimes and security in post-conflict zones. Welcome, Massimiliano. And last but not least, we have Christian Imura, who is Head of Safety and Security for the Department of Confederation of African Football, CAF, which is oversight of some 55 member countries and based in Egypt. Previously, Christian was Head of Security for the Nigerian Football Federation for over a decade. Welcome all.
Thank you.
We'll just go to some opening statements. So, Hani, if you could be so kind to just provide a 2 to 3 minute comment in relation to this panel today, please.
Well, thank you, Fred, for allowing me to be part of this high and prestigious panel. So I appreciate your welcome address. I'm very happy and proud to be part of this week. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank all those who really worked hard to make this a reality, to make this week started yesterday as with an exceptional sessions. And I'm sure that it was going to continue until the 11th of this month. And I'm sure this will have a global echo on preserving our sports and the integrity of it. Of course, the global effect of COVID-19 on sport has really impacted everyone, and definitely sport and football before COVID-19 pandemic will be different after the COVID-19 pandemic. Not forgetting also the impact on this either the stoppage or the suspension or the termination of competitions or leagues, on the well-being of players, referees, and also the preservation of integrity during these hard times. So we have to again always be one step ahead, because the more the stoppage is available and the more suspension is there, it's the more time for the syndicates and criminals to do even bigger and bigger homework to come back stronger and stronger. This is why we need to keep again and again our toes on the ground and be proactive and do the planning and the preparation for the prevention of and safeguard our sports and football. And out of the pandemic and out of crisis and challenges come solutions and come good news. But again, you have to do what it takes to make this happen. Doing the best is not good anymore during the pandemic for those organizations who wants to stand out and to take the challenges very seriously. So we have to adopt now the logo of doing what it takes. And do what it takes is really doing things differently to make it happen. And just as an example of what I'm saying now, is basically what are you doing now, Fred, by giving again this session and having this week alive through SIGA. This is doing what it takes. Doing what it takes. Also, those leagues who really has resumed their leagues by doing things differently and taking the challenges on hand and starting and finishing their leagues during the pandemic. This is in QSL. This is what we did as well. In QSL, we took the challenge of resuming the league. So we resumed 5 weeks of the league during the pandemic, preserving also the integrity, because it's very important to come back again and resume the league with the preservation of all the integrity that will protect also the players and the referees in the league. So we continued again evaluating, monitoring all those 5 weeks of resumption as we are a normal circumstances. We also will, in few days, we will host the Asian Champions League for the West, inviting 16 teams from Asia of the West, 4 teams from Saudi Arabia, 4 teams from UAE, 4 teams from Iran, and 1 team from Uzbekistan, 1 team from Iraq, and 2 teams from Qatar. And we will be hosting this event, again, reinforcing also the integrity, because we will also have we have plans also to do workshops for the players, the referees, all those involved through this tournament. So again and again, we have to work one step ahead of our, I would say, evil network that is trying to penetrate and use this stoppage time to affect our sport.
Excellent.
So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hani. It's very true that criminals don't take furlough or annual leave. So it's very good points. Thank you very much. We'll hand over to Leif now, please. Leif, just for opening statement, please.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Before you can actually hear me, right?
Oh, perfect, clear.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Fred, and thank you very much for inviting me. It's a great honor, of course, for me on behalf of UNICRI to attend this Sports Integrity Week, and also to participate in this panel on the impact of COVID-19 on the sports integrity. And let me also start by thanking our partners, the Sports Integrity Global Alliance and the International Center for Sports Security, for convening this week and for organizing this, I think, very important and timely event. I think it has already been mentioned, but we all know that, of course, that sport has always been, let's say, an integral part of human history, shaping many aspects of the development of human beings. And most recently, sport also became an important contributor to economic and social development. And I think for these reasons, the role of sport is, of course, well recognized within the United Nations in several resolutions and recommendations, as well as by the 2030 agenda. And I don't want to go into all the details of that. But within this framework, the United Nations, including UNICRI, envisions sports as, I think, a very important and powerful tool with the potential to tackle challenges entailed in each of all the 17 SDG Sustainable Development Goals. So I think following the current health and economic crisis created by the COVID-19 pandemic, many questions are rising with regards to the effect, both directly and indirectly, that it may have on organized crime, criminal strategies, and in particular, whether the pandemic is opening new scenarios for organized crime. So within this context, UNICRI has, as part of its bigger research mandate, been closely monitoring the role of organized crime during the pandemic, collecting information, research, discussion findings with many of our different partners. And I think the results so far of this research demonstrate clearly that organized crime has been capable of fully exploiting the many different opportunities created by the COVID-19 crisis. I think in an environment where social and economic problems are growing and are involving a large amount of people, and of course in this particular case at the global level, criminal organizations may easily find new ways to take advantage and make their business even more lucrative. And I think this may also have an impact on sports. So we know that will also have an impact on sports. While of course our research was mainly focused on how organized crime in general has been expanding during the COVID-19 crisis, it demonstrated, and I believe not surprisingly, that organized crime had a remarkable capacity to adapt to the new social, political, and economic condition, to look for new opportunities and markets, and to infiltrate into the legal economy. And I think for this reason, and I think I'm just echoing what already was mentioned, I think for this reason, it is in particular important that we don't lose our focus on the integrity of sports in all its different aspects. I think actually on the contrary, we have to make the best use of this time to develop or to strengthen these policies and measures that can strengthen the sports integrity, preserving its economic and social function, and defend the sports from crime. I think the temporary absence of sport events does not eliminate sports integrity issues, such as addressing corruption in sport and preventing the manipulation of competition. At the same time, the restarting of competitions and events after the crisis, it has already started, of course, may require extra preventative measures and vigilance. I think all these remain, of course, crucial in promoting integrity in the sports world and the industry. And I think as we are working to provide responses to the crisis in the short term, the next phase is to overcoming the pandemic may also require a new way of thinking for the future. While we are working for this reopening phase, I think nobody should be tempted to disregard those principles in the name of a quick restart. And I think we all should work together to ensure that the reopening of sport and its surrounding world will be based on the principle of fairness, and equally important, on strong institutions with a full capacity to enforce those principles. And as such, I believe that this time shall be used by governments, by sports organizations, by the federation, and all of us that truly love sport, to promote all those reforms, the actions, in order to create those conditions for a productive reopening phase, while ensuring at the same time that the world of sport won't be further exposed to the criminal organization. So in conclusion, placing the integrity of sport at the center of any response, I think, is the key to ensuring the sport emerges from this challenge as strong as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Leif. And it's very important that, I suppose, in times of such adversity, that we must protect sport at all costs. It shows you how important it is to the overarching global community. Thanks very much. Massimiliano, over to you.
Morning, Fred. Thank you very much for your moderation, and I'm so glad to be in this panel with such strong and good partners and friends since many years. Unicre, QSL, and CAF. So it's a great pleasure for me. Allow me a few words about our, let's say, position in the context of the Sport Integrity Week. We are so glad that this initiative is happening, because it shows that we are now many. It shows that actually those who are committed to fight against corruption in sport is now a big army. Is now a big army. I remember when we started 10 years ago, still, we were confused. We didn't know how to start. We didn't know the phenomenon. We didn't have the instruments. Nowadays, after 10 years of hard work by the international community, the instruments are in place. We know the phenomenon. We know where corruption is. So now it's just a matter of as my friend Ali Ballan said, to do the right thing and make it happen. So we are now in the position really to go after criminal groups, but also to go after, let's say, the white collars. Those that you are, let's say, utilizing, sometimes the poor policies and poor procedures, to manipulate and to affect the integrity of sport, starting from the integrity of their own organization. So I think we are now in the position to do it and to make it happen. Going, let's say, back to the topic of the day, the impact of COVID in the integrity field. I mean, as my colleagues mentioned, the situation clearly is impacting and is making more vulnerable, particularly those who are already, let's say, the most vulnerable ones. So certainly the COVID-19 is having a terrible impact on the sport industry, on the economies of particularly of the smallest federation and the smallest clubs, making them more and more vulnerable to organized crime. So for certain clubs which have been significantly affected by COVID-19, the temptation to manipulate sporting result competition might be actually real and could be considered as a solution or as a shortcut to solve, let's say, certain financial issues. Individual athletes are perhaps even most vulnerable, because they are not, let's say, protected by the contracts given to them by by their clubs or in certain contests directly by their leagues. So we know, we are aware about the cases, for instance, of tennis players that during the COVID period, they earn about, let's say, $100, you know, so certainly not enough to survive. So these are certain situations that are making individuals more vulnerable to organized crimes. Again, we mentioned the case of referees, you know, that actually, you know, they sometimes, you know, they earn, you know, money during the competition. Very often, referees which are not, let's say, performing as referees is not, let's say, their main profession. So this money can be utilized sometimes to complement, you know, their activities, their work, or to support the studies. So certainly, COVID-19 is making the field, the sport industry, much more, let's say, vulnerable to the infiltration of organized crime. At the same time, as my, let's say, last consideration for this first round of question, clubs and leagues or federation might also fall, let's say, in the temptation of, while, let's say, trying to reduce their cost in order, let's say, to survive in this period of time, to reduce, for instance, investment in their own sport integrity sector. So we know very well that when a company, you know, has financial difficulties, normally they reduce or they cut CSR investments. And in this case, let's say all the sport integrity investments could be reduced by the relevant stakeholders with an impact, of course, on the integrity of sport.
Thank you very much, Massimiliano. It's very true that shining the spotlight on transnational organised crime is the key, and it's taken a fair bit of time to understand their methodologies, because as we know, criminals are very innovative, and they'll use any of these such situations to take their advantage. So thank you very much. Next, I'll pass over to Christian. Christian.
Thank you very much, Fred. Let me also use this opportunity to thank the organizers for extending an invitation to us. On CAF, we are very grateful to be part of these discussions and deliberations on the integrity of sports. Just to give a quick rundown, when we talk about the impact of COVID-19 on sport integrity, and I'm speaking now from the perspective of one staying in a region that is considered as very vulnerable even before the COVID-19 experience. I want to look at it from four angles. I want to look at it from the legislation challenges, the internal challenges, the economic challenges, and then the external challenges. I start with the internal challenges first. We currently have a lot of challenges going on. There is already, before COVID-19, in most clubs, associations, federations, a poor governance system, lack of transparency in dealings within the system, lack of accountability within the system, lack of being democratic within the system. All these are problems that already existed before the coming in of COVID-19. And with the introduction of COVID-19 as an additional problem, these systems are not going anywhere. They seem to be increasing by the day. We also take a look at the economic challenges. Of course, COVID-19 has brought a lot of hardship to most sports institutions and even persons and athletes, as a matter of fact. The stoppage of the games in Africa, where you have situations where people eat from hand to mouth, has also exposed a lot of organizations and sport entities to being much more vulnerable than what you can really expect. Because now you have financial limitations from companies who ordinarily would want to support these associations or clubs. They are also struggling to keep afloat. As such, a lot of them are possibly going to be cutting down on what they should be spending on sports. We also have downsizing going on in some of the clubs. Of course, we also have reduction of benefits, that is also happening currently as we speak, and other things that goes with it. And yet, the external challenges, which is the crux of the matter, the manipulators themselves, are having a lot of edge in this regard, because now they are also having the opportunity to increase their investment because you don't have sports going on everywhere in the world. So now they can concentrate on the little areas where these sports activities are going on and channel investments into those areas. And when I say investments, I mean funds that can be used to manipulate outcomes of games. And also, they're also increasing their reach, because now they know that a lot of associations, clubs, and federations are actually trying to survive, and as such would go for any opportunity that comes their way in way of funding or what have you. And of course, the last aspect is the aspect of legislation. We hardly have countries, as we speak, that have laws that protects the integrity of sports in those countries. And one would have expected that within this period of COVID-19, when there was no sports activities going on, that there would have been more investment in the timing of planning to develop good governance structures, to come up with proper legislations, to come up with every paperwork that would assist in protecting the integrity of sports. But I have not seen this happening in most of the countries. I think everybody went to bed just as COVID-19 hit the entire African continent. And what you see mostly is countries trying to play catch up, from the health perspective, while leaving other critical and vulnerable areas exposed to, these opportunities by those who are looking for ways by which they can come in to ensure they manipulate the outcomes of games. So having said all this, I honestly feel strongly that the impact of COVID-19 are things that we will begin to see more practically in the coming months. I feel strongly that to help associations in Africa, for example, confederations in Africa, federations in Africa, it is the responsibility, and this is very seriously my conviction, it is the responsibility of the international bodies to strengthen their governance structures and demand that these be adhered to by member associations, because we of course have seen so many palliatives, so to speak, coming to member associations, from even FIFA giving funds to support associations that are possibly going to be having challenges. The question I don't know yet is how transparent is this entire process, and how accountable will these monies that are coming in to these member associations be? And to what extent is it going to be beneficial to the actual actors themselves, like the players in clubs that do not have enough funding and are struggling currently to survive? So these are, for me, very critical issues that international federations need to sit down up there and look at how these monies they are doling out are going to trickle down to have a positive effect on the real actors that are currently on ground. And of course, when this is done, it will also help the sport in itself. I know, as I said, coming few months from now, we will be seeing the full-blown effects of COVID-19 in Africa majorly, because you will begin to hear the stories of things that are happening. Ordinarily, before now, in some countries where most of their league games, for example, are not on television, the spectators used to serve as a check in the event that the game is being manipulated. The spectators will be there to either harass the management of the team or harass the team players themselves. But now you have a combined situation where most leagues that came up are playing behind closed doors. So they also do not have anybody to check them. They are not scared of anything. And there's no threat actually to their survival, if you ask me. They can do anything within the 90 minutes on the pitch and walk back into their buses and take a walk. So the pictures that come to my head is a club that is surviving to pay its travel fees to the next destination for its match, being approached and having the opportunity to make a lot of money for just losing a game that does not have spectators watching, that does not have the TV covering, tends to give us much more damage than you can ever imagine. So these are things that really flood my mind each time we take a look at the impact of COVID-19 within the context of protecting sport integrity within the continent of Africa. And it's a really, really big concern for me, and I feel that it is something that we would need to really resonate very much within this forum, so that at least those who are controlling the affairs of the international bodies will see the need to take responsibility as well to assist in protecting the integrity of the sport down the line as much as possible. Thank you very much, Fred.
Thanks very much, Christian. Very important points, and it just goes to show that with poor governance in some locations, lack of legislation, COVID-19, it's becoming a perfect storm for organised crime to manipulations and do their work while everybody else is focused on other significant issues. Thanks very much for the introductions. What we'll do is I'd just like to take note that we've got over 50 plus visitors in the watching on today, and with quite extensive experience. So we've got people from sports federation associations, academia, sports business, and even government with a wealth of experience. That's great to see that we've got these viewers today, which is fantastic. What I might just do, because of the time, is just try and squeeze one quick question in from the floor, which we've got at the moment, which is from Ite Ingberg, the co-founder of CBO Match Fixing. So basically, the question is that since COVID-19, international travel has become more difficult and expensive. Sports such as tennis has already led to match fixing of lower ranked players that are now even more vulnerable. What can be done to resolve this? So if someone would just like to make a quick statement in relation to that, could relate to tennis, could relate to any other sport, but just sort of showing the vulnerabilities of lower ranked players in sport.
Well, sorry, Fred, can I speak on?
Sure, absolutely, Christian, please jump in.
Okay. Well, it goes without saying, just as you have low-ranking athletes in tennis, I could also relate it to the same scenario of having low-ranking teams, that are not doing very well either at their Premier League level. Basically, we're talking about the same indices. People that are not exposed to having the required funding to make a living the way they should. They become much more vulnerable and susceptible to being manipulated. And of course, this to me is a big challenge, because you cannot really do anything if you do not have the proper legislation in place to protect this group of persons, this group of entities. Even if you are able to get this culprit, if you don't have laws to prosecute them within the territory of your country, it becomes a problem even to get it done. But going to that would be like trying to reach to the sky. But that should be our ultimate goal, to have countries have proper legislations to deal with this kind of issues. But I think that the sport entities needs to take responsibility. What has the sport federations done, within their systems, to put in place integrity measures that can protect their sports? Because if we don't take these responsibilities to protect our sports and the athletes that are within our sports, then we become much more vulnerable. I know that for example, I know FIFA has been advocating for the FIFA Integrity Initiative for some years now. First question we need to ask some of the federations that have been affiliated to FIFA for so long: how many federations have integrity officers in their federations? How many federations have integrity guidelines in their federations? If an athlete is approached today, who does he call? Is there a number that he can call? If he calls that number, what happens next? Is there somebody that will take up the issue and investigate? If the person investigates, is there a procedure in place to sanction in the event that they catch some people culpable? So what is the extent of the collaboration between the sport federations and the government agencies, like the law enforcement agencies in the countries? So it's a chain of events that needs to follow. And for me, as I said, The ideal for us, which is the long term, should be to work towards having countries come up with legislations to protect their sports and the integrity of sports. But in the short term, we should force federations to come up with clear guidelines on their integrity initiatives and own the sport. They should take the ownership of the sport. By this, I mean ownership in terms of protecting the guidelines on what we need to do and who is responsible for what. That's just what I can contribute on this for now.
Thank you very much, Christian. It's the sporting organisations and administrations taking ownership, and I think something that Massimiliano mentioned in relation to a tennis player earning $100 for the year. You think about a tennis player takes $144,000 plus to play the circuit in 12 months, so you can sort of work out the mathematics of course, some of those lower ranked players. But thanks very much for that question from Ite from Match Vision. Thank you very much for that. And I'll move across to Leif. A question, if I may. In view of the competing reopening of sport and its surrounding business, what is the role of UNICRI and the UN in support of the integrity of sport?
That's a good question. I think, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, the role of sport is of course well recognized by the UN, including UNICRI, and also of course in the relation to the 2030 agenda. And I think in particular, UNICRI has continued to work also during the lockdown on specific activities and programs. And in particular, one program that I would like to mention is the program on the protection of sport events that we are implementing in cooperation with the UNOTT, UNOC, and our partner ICSS, Massimiliano. And I think one of the main features of this program is to look at the security of these events, while in parallel making sure that the hosting member states governments is promoting and reinforcing or enforcing the integrity of sport starting from the bidding phase. So that is more our, let's say, direct activities. But I would say UN in general, of course, in this context, it is important to highlight the importance of what we call the UN Convention Against Corruption, because it outlines a number of different instruments how to support the world of sport, and is indeed targeting several forms of corruption, and includes, as I mentioned, relevant model preventive policies. And perhaps also in this context, and I think we already alluded a bit to it, as a reference, I think I could refer to some of the recommendations to the national governments elaborated by the UN, United Nations, in cooperation with Interpol and the International Olympic, in this paper that we call the Preventing Corruption in Sport and Manipulation of Competition. And it has a number of recommendations that I think was a bit referred to already, but both for responses, but for the short term, but also for the long term. So in particular for the short term, to develop tools to detect and report corruption in sports and prevent the manipulation of competitions. And again, in particular in view of what I mentioned in terms of the impact of reduced salaries and the way that criminal groups may seek to exploit the situation to gain influence. A second recommendation was to, and it was already mentioned, to ensure that support provided to sport is used for its intended purposes. And again, there may be a need, you mentioned a tennis player before, again, there may be a need for direct assistance, while at the same time, there may also be a need to establish, I would say, clear criteria to ensure that those in greatest need of assistance qualify and receive it. And then, of course, I think it's also important what we are doing today to prevent corruption in sport, and specifically the manipulation of competition, by continuing to raise the awareness about these risks. And as I mentioned, the event today is a good example of that. And for the more long term, and again was probably already mentioned a bit, to ensure that regulations, to ensure that the legislations are in place to tackle corruption in sports and the manipulation of competition. And then also again to support governments to develop an effective national cooperation framework between the law enforcement, between criminal justice authorities, and between the sports organization. And of course, UN and in particular UNICRI, of course, stands ready to support and is already supporting a number of government and federations on that. So that's the way I see the role of the UN, of UNICRI, to support in the implementation of many of the recommendations that I just referred to. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Leif. It's very important to look at the interconnect between the issues of COVID, corruption in sport, and also terrorism. So the program that you're involved in relation to the United Nations Office of Counter-Terrorism, ICSS, UNICRI, for prevention of violent extremism and creating safe sporting events is such a critical key program at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, just to react quickly to that, of course, we have seen examples, at least of, let's say, younger people triggered through the social media, to a certain degree because of the COVID, into organized crime. I don't know yet whether we have seen examples, whether they've been triggered into terrorism, but we have seen these trends already, so we are quite concerned, actually, about that.
No, thanks very much. Something definitely to keep an eye on, absolutely, for sure. Thank you very much, John. Hani, I'll go to you next, just bearing in mind with timing, etc. But just a quick question, if I may. You wear two hats, one being the Deputy Chair of the AFC and FIFA Referees Committee. What are some of the current threats facing referees, and what are you currently doing or planning to do to safeguard referees during this crisis and beyond? Because sometimes they're forgotten about.
Thank you, Fred. It's a very good question, actually. As it has been mentioned from all our expertise on this panel, the vulnerability has to be taken very seriously. And I think referees, or the men in black, as we always go to refer back to them, although they have now multicolored jerseys, but the men in black also deserve great attention and great, I would say, great help in this area. So two things that contribute to the vulnerabilities in terms of refereeing. One is the lack of awareness, and secondly is, of course, the financial impact that COVID-19 has also to impact on not only the referees but also the players. But let's talk about the referees again and again, going back to the syndicates and the criminals and the way they will use to penetrate, either using the lack of awareness or the financial, I would say, obligation or stress, or I would say financial well-being of the referees. And these two areas the awareness can be always tackled by, as we always do, we continue doing the courses online, we continue doing the workshops online, and we always embed modules about integration, about awareness, integrity, corruption, manipulation, and how to identify and how to report all these incidents. And of course, there are numerous applications that referees can, that targeted referees can always use and get help. Numerous also hotlines that we always promote in the refereeing fraternity to urge the referees to stand up and fight the corruption. In terms of financially also, as you know, the pandemic and the stoppage and suspension of the matches and the competition also draw a big line under the financial support of referees, and hence it's very important again to go and create ways to make those who are totally dependent on refereeing or most vulnerable to be able to sustain their well-being and to sustain their living expenses. And this only can be created by, again, by allocation of specific funds, let's say a pandemic trust for the referees in the future, or also to help them to be, again, have dual occupation or dual jobs in terms of not only totally to be dependent on refereeing, but also to be interdependent by collaborating with other stakeholders to make them ready and prepared to be able to get also other jobs for the future. It's very important, Fred, also that to understand that there has been an introduction of operational tools that also will help in terms of integrity. We started using the AAR, which is the additional assistant referees, which again focuses as when it was introduced firstly on the penalty area incidents, which again, it's a very, very decisive decision can be taken there to make a difference in the match. And again, there are extra eyes that can again look at it. And recently, of course, the successful introduction of the VAR, which again has elaborated a lot in preserving the integrity of the game, having more and more advanced tools and more cameras spread all over the field of play to identify crucial incidents that makes a difference in the match, and hence again makes the finding of faults or mistakes much easier to be corrected by our referees. So
Very good, Hadi.
thank you. This is what I can say.
Thank you very much. It's been great to see that there's such dynamic thinking and forward thinking around that whole program around the referees that you're doing. It's absolutely exceptional because they do get sometimes forgotten. So thanks very much for that. Massimiliano, please, if I may go to you for the next question. COVID-19 has had a massive impact on safety, security, integrity of major sporting events. As CEO of the ICSS and also Save the Dream, what key programs and partners have you been working with to protect international sport?
Okay, thank you, Fred. Let me mention an analysis that we started last June, jointly with UNICRI, with the UN Office of Counterterrorism and the UN Alliance of Civilization, on the impact of COVID-19 on the security of sport and the security of major sporting events in particular. So we have identified a number, let's say, of new vulnerabilities in the security field that could be caused by COVID-19, including, let's say, a new wave or higher wave of violent extremism that could also have then an impact on the security of sport. But we also look at on how certain measures which are, let's say, conceived to address or to protect sport from COVID might have a dual use and therefore has a positive impact in the field of security. So I'm talking about the use of technology, information exchange, or let's say certain measures that are, let's say, could be applicable in both domains. This topic, however, has a strong link to the topic of integrity at the same time, or perhaps even more to the topic of human rights protection, because we also need to be very careful starting from now, and because we cannot think that certain measures and certain limitations of also individual liberties that we have all accepted in this period of time because of the COVID emergency might always become, let's say, acceptable also in the future from a security perspective. So it's really important that we all find the right balance between the need to protect our health, the health of our, let's say, future generation, security, but at the same time balancing all these measures with fundamental, let's say, liberties and human rights protection. Another threat that we have identified, particularly with regard to integrity and to the well-being of youth, are, let's say, all the threats related to esports and online activities, because obviously during the COVID pandemic, the best way to continue for children and youth to remain engaged in sport-related activities was obviously, like esports and e-games, which were also a great opportunity for kids to remain socially connected online. So because of this, of course, we have seen an increase of misconducts and criminal activities online, such as cybercrime, but sexual phishing, for instance, or ghost games. So these are all, let's say, new forms of crimes that we need to be aware of. Allow me just a final consideration, because perhaps we should not just talk about, let's say, threats or risks, but also about possible solutions. I believe, we should all bear in mind and understand that even once COVID will be over, the world will not be the same. We are entering into a new world order. The world economy will not be the same, and therefore also the sport economy will necessarily change. We cannot think that sport will be, from an economic and social perspective, let's say, immune, from the future, let's say, global global changes. So we need to think about solutions. The sport industry will be different. Professional sports will be different. The big sport industry will be different. So we need to think on where it will be most meaningful, invest the limited resources we might have available in the future, because spending capacity will be different. And I believe that the youth investments in the youth sector should become the priority. Also to reconsider the hierarchy also of the values that we had in place so far, and that investment in sport values education should be prioritized and taken into account within the framework of an holistic approach to strengthen the youth sports sector. So preparing the new generation of athletes should not be seen only from a technical or physical viewpoint, but also from a value and integrity viewpoint. So any dollar or any other currency invested in sport integrity and education should not be seen as a cost, but as an investment in the future of sport.
Thank you very much, Mr. Milano. Exceptional points. And also, I suppose, what I see over the top of that is the key aspect of information exchange, which covers it all. I mean, that's one of the areas that we see internationally across all aspects of criminal investigations, anti-corruption investigations, etc., is the lack of information exchange and building those trusted networks to do that. So that's very, very important. I'll just go back and have a quick look now at how much time I have left. I think we'll need to wrap it up now. So what I'd like to do is just like to say thank you very much to all the speakers, to Hani, to Leith, to Christian, to yourself, Mr. Miliano. It's been an outstanding session, very, very interesting. Thank you for the questions from the floor. We don't have enough time to really cover a couple more questions that we do have, but I'd like to say thank you very much, and it's been an absolute pleasure, and look forward to catching up with all of you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tori.
We had sound issues there. Fred, thank you very much indeed. That was a fascinating panel. And I think, the key point to come out of it is there were so many issues there that we could have delved into that unfortunately we didn't have time to. And as a result, if you're listening and you want to be connected with a particular panelist, maybe you want to try and facilitate some one-to-one time, or in addition, you'd just like to pass on a comment or a message, then you can use the app. Obviously, there is the ability to ask questions during sessions, but in addition, you can use the hashtag on social media, SIW, and that will enable you to give feedback and comments. And if you've missed the session because potentially you're in a region where it's a little bit too early to have seen the whole thing, maybe you joined it halfway, maybe you're in America and you learn about it first on social media, we will endeavor to get all of these sessions up in full via our website or on YouTube, and clips as well coming through social media as well. So a great way to start day 2 of Sports Integrity Week by SIGA and presented by MasterCard. And it's amazing to have all of you with us from around the world. So many industry experts as well. I think Fred alluded to 50 or so on the call, and equally as impressive as our panelists is the credibility that we have from many of our viewers who are experts within this particular field. And that is why it's so important that you engage with us. So stay with us. In about 5 minutes time, we'll be moving on to our next session. That's a keynote speech from Mohammed Hanzab, who is the Vice Chair of Civil Society. It's entitled Winners Play by the Rules. And then just a heads up about the rest of the day as well. At 8:30 GMT, that's 9:30 CET, we'll hear from Louis Saha, the former Manchester United and France forward. He'll be talking about the protection of athletes. And at 10 o'clock GMT, that's 11 o'clock CET, we've got a panel called Sustain the Game, and that is powered by the Football Supporters Association, and it will be moderated by the journalist David Goldblatt. So that's coming up this morning. Do stay with us, and like I say, join us again in about 5 minutes time when we'll move on to our next keynote speech, which is from Mohammed Hanzab.
Hello everyone and greetings from Budapest, Hungary.
Hello from Kosovo.
My name is Jerice Cologne.
My name is Luisa.
I'm Ian Smith.
Cameron Casoglas.
Edwin Moses.
My name's Afi Sheikh and I'm Head of Standards and Integrity Services here in London, England.
I'm Senior Manager of Member Associations Governance Services at FIFA.
Integrity is the bedrock of all competitive sport. Without it, there is nothing.
By definition, it is the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles.
Integrity is surely one of the most significant elements in sports.
As a cricket umpire, one of the most important tasks for any umpire is to make sure the decision making is as efficient as possible. This can only be possible if umpires work with integrity.
Perhaps now more than ever, we recognize the importance of this vision for sports and the need for integrity in every aspect of sport.
We are a member of SIGA, and not only because we believe in integrity in sports, but to the fact that we believe in coalitions and collective efforts to achieve change.
We all know that sport is one of the most powerful things on the planet for bringing about societal change, and we all want to be part of that, and we want you to be part of it, and we absolutely all need to do it together.
This is a task none of us can achieve on our own. It is one that all of us must achieve together.
I believe that together we're stronger.
Together, united, we can effect positive change by developing and promoting integrity principles and values.
I would like, first of all, to praise SIGA's leadership in the persons of its chairman and its CEO for having had the courage to organize this event under the current circumstances.
Thank you to SIGA for the work that you do for sports integrity and for the example your independent rating and verification systems for the world of sports.
Organisations such as SIGA, who are there to make standards better and to uniform all the standards throughout the industry, are needed.
SIGA is unavoidable and unrivaled organization with unrivaled role in the field of the integrity of the sport.
I think this first Integrity Week is very important.
ISST is proud to be associated with the SIGA movement.
I am proud to partner with the Sport Integrity Global Alliance and participate in this year's Sports Integrity Week.